So a lot of you may be aware that Tsawwassen First Nation has, is the traditional territory of Coast Salish people, and there have been older archaeological sites that have been found in the English Buff more than 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. They believe this is their ancestral home for much more than what we have found evidence for. So after 14 years of negotiations, Tsawwassen First Nation went through signing the modern treaty in April 2009. We became a self-governing First Nation with 724 hectares of traditional territory. And the treaty has actually provided a comprehensive toolkit to make us, have the authority over our land and regulate the framework, the operations, the tax, everything on our lands, and enact the required laws to make sure that we have a regulated development on our lands. We manage our finances. So there's a Tsawwassen Land Act, which is similar to the BC Land Act, and also the Tsawwassen Land Use Planning and Development Act and Community Governance Act, which mirror the planning and development of the BC Local Government Act and the BC Community Charter. We are not mandated by the Local Government Act, but we operate in a similar way. So it has a self-governing status that has a 12-member legislature and the chief who pass the laws and approve annual budgets. So it's a very streamlined strategic approach. The chief and top 4 legislatures operate as the executive council and oversee the day-to-day work. TFN sits on the Metro Vancouver board with 21 other municipalities and 1 electoral, and also participates in the TransLink initiatives and TransLink board. We have our own unique identity with taxation, governance, land use legislation, and many other powers. The TFN Land Act establishes legal framework for something called a Tsawwassen fee simple interest holding. So earlier, these were certificate of possession holdings during the Indian Act. And when the treaty was signed, they were transferred into the land tenure called TFSI. So the owners of TFSI, which is our members, they can develop their land or they can lease them on a long-term basis. A significant amount of TFN land has been leased, and there are some 4 big developers that have built a variety of housing options as well as commercial and industrial projects. So our Executive Council also established the TFSI Holder Partnership Regulation and TFSI Holder Corporation Regulation, which was to give our members an opportunity to become partners with the developers through this business model, and have the freedom to develop their lands and then lease them up to 99 years. Since the treaty is almost, this April will be 12 years, we operate as a modern treaty almost now 12 years. Our pioneers had a great vision, so there has been substantial investment in strategic infrastructure projects, roads, buildings, sewage treatment, all that which is required for a lot of housing projects as well as commercial and industrial projects that are being undertaken on TFN lands. Without infrastructure, we really cannot develop those. So it was a vision, and so a lot of investment was funneled into that. The opening of Tsawwassen Mills and the Tsawwassen Commons, which is the commercial lands, was in 2016 was exposure to a lot of ambitious and progressive plans for self-reliance. The industrial lands, we also have a huge um, Amazon warehouse and many other industrial development. We have a mixed community of almost 3,000 residential market housing units. So all kinds, single family, townhouses, apartments, duplexes. We are now into developing 42 residential non-market, which is the affordable housing rental units for our members. 6 of them are almost complete, and the other 36 townhouse project is underway. And we have a significant proportion, 155 hectares or more of agricultural land, which is in the agricultural land reserve. And so we are now doing agricultural business planning, and we'll have some pilot projects that will help achieve local food security for our members. So many initiatives ongoing right now. Community facilities planning, our new youth center has been completed recently, which is our first big facility, and it's going to serve the current and future youth of TFN. Our elder center is in design stage and progressing well. Facilities planning has two phases have been completed. Comprehensive housing strategy is underway. This initiative is what we are talking about today mostly. Coastal flood risk assessment, drainage improvements, cemetery development, more new member housing projects like some of the affordable units that are under construction, agriculture business planning, and TFN placemaking and design guidelines. There's a lot of initiatives that are on right now, and it's a very happening and exciting place, but this is possible because there is an amazing team that's working behind all this at TFN. This is just a few photos. Our Tsawwassen Mills is the mall, a photo of the apartment developments, industrial. More photos of our parks and the sports field, member houses that are being built, the mall and the industrial areas. And this is our brand new youth center, about 9.5 million state-of-art facility for the current and future youth. And it has significant Coast Salish architectural vocabulary. It's a beautiful beginning of many other facilities that will evolve on TFN lands. Now over to Komal, my colleague. She'll be talking about the strategic plan and land use and many other things. Thank you.
We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry. My name is Komal Sheikh, and I am fortunate to be the Director of Lands at the Tsawwassen First Nation. And thank you all for giving us an opportunity to share our story with you. At the time of treaty, one of the requirements that we had from our treaty partners, the province of British Columbia and Canada, was to develop an integrated land use plan for the nation's original reserve lands at the time, as well as the treaty settlement lands. A land use plan was developed through intensive community consultation. And this land use plan guides the physical development of the Tsawwassen lands and functions like the official community plan used by other jurisdictions. This plan was voted by the entire community, and it has guided the development of Tsawwassen lands since then. May I have the next slide, please? Along with the physical development of Tsawwassen lands, there was also a strategic plan and a development vision for the Tsawwassen people that was developed. The latest version of this plan was developed in 2018 and sets out broad goals and objectives under 6 key theme areas. And again, this was developed by the entire through intensive community consultation. And it also lays out indicators to measure success at each of those areas. The 6 broad areas are community and culture, health and well-being, economic development, lands, housing and infrastructure, and governance. So under those areas, then there's sort of a roadmap to carry out the work that's outlined in the plan. May I have the next slide, please? And under the under the strategic plan, then further we have a vision for our community area, which is where all member-held lands are concentrated, and most of the traditional family compounds and member-owned houses lie. And both the strategic plan and the land use plan speak to creating a complete community for the TFN member community that protects TFN culture, that affords members the opportunities to flourish in ways that support Tsawwassen language and culture and Tsawwassen traditions. Everyone has access to safe housing and amenities, and as well, it affords employment and economic development opportunities for all members. So that's the broad framework for the TFN community area. May I have the next slide, please? And the next. So much of the work that we've been doing over the past 2 or 3 years was to build on these themes that were set out in the land use plan as well as the strategic plan, and the broad delineation of the community area plan that was made in the land use plan. And up until after treaty, there were a number of different challenges, and a lot of economic development had to be enabled on treaty lands to ensure that the new government had revenues to develop all the programming that was needed for the all-around development of the nation and its membership. And housing issues continued to be dealt with more or less in the manner that they were prior to treaty. And there was an incremental approach. After a few years after treaty, there was a housing coordinator hired, and they looked at allocating lots to members and helping out with renovations through the CMHC and IS grants and so on. But there wasn't an integrated approach to try and move the marker on housing. And so we felt that we needed a overarching housing strategy that would help us frame our work in housing in a consistent manner and lay down clear expectations for staff and membership that we could then meet in a timely fashion. And so we and it was good timing, because at the time the BC First Nations Housing and Infrastructure Council was being set up. The Squamish First Nation was talking about developing their housing strategy. And so it was a really interesting time and a landscape to be thinking along those lines. And our strategic plan itself called for developing a comprehensive housing plan. And so based on our understanding, we tried to forge ahead on this path to develop a comprehensive housing strategy. And the other advantage to developing a strategic approach to all things housing on Tsawwassen lands was to clearly identify projects and help our grant applications to attract that financial support from other funding partners, because it would then really give us the rationale for attracting that investment in TFN housing assets. And so over the past year, we looked at, we developed a preliminary framework, and Priyanka will delve a little bit deeper into the pillars of the housing strategy. But once we developed the internally broad key focus areas and a very rudimentary framework, we then looked at grants and funding options to further this work along. And we came up, we identified the Real Estate Foundation of BC as a funding partner, and we received a grant last year. And this learning is enabled in part by that grant award, but we were able to further flesh out our work under the housing strategy. And truly, internally also, we advocated a whole of government approach to all things housing on Tsawwassen lands, and we wanted to try and have us move away from the housing manager being responsible solely for all things housing on Tsawwassen lands, and have a more comprehensive approach within the organization and have everyone working on the same team, on the same page. So if it was getting help from our policy writers in our policy department, or getting our legal department looking at legal issues, having our health and social services folks roped in to provide wraparound support to our members, and then pass on all this information to our finance department to make sure that everybody got the whole picture and not the little bit that they were handling, was one of our key interests, to have housing delivered and managed in a way that was more holistic and more responsive to our members' needs. So we identified our assets, and we identified our challenges, and we wanted to be able to ensure that we're able to provide housing on Tsawwassen lands in a manner that keeps pace with the changing realities around us. And for Tsawwassen, this is particularly relevant because much of our treaty settlement lands were being developed rapidly. The government-owned lands were developed through commercial and industrial projects, and then some of our member families got together and, using the land use plan as a tool, got into development partnerships with other external developers to provide a variety of housing stock for leaseholders. So they entered into leasehold arrangements and developed market housing for non-Tsawwassen members on Tsawwassen lands. And so all of that development was happening at a really rapid pace. And we really needed to strengthen our own mechanisms for the delivery and maintenance and creation of new housing stock in a way that member lands and member housing kept pace with the surrounding market developments. And so this tool is hopefully helps us guide along that path as well.
Kamal, could we ask a question for a moment or take a minute? John, did you want to address your question?
Sure. In the earlier part, we had the plans. We've been having discussions among last few days about planning and floods and natural disasters. When you guys were doing your planning, did you also take into account of the potential floodplains, because you're right along the coast? And what about earthquakes and your construction? Like, do you guys have to take, I assume you have to take your buildings into account, right?
Yeah. So we do have emergency response plan, but we also have all of TFN lands are in the floodplain, and we have when we developed our building regulations and our land act, one of the requirements is for the approach was to address some of the, for us, it's also the coastal flood risk and the rising sea levels, because we are land facing the sea. Tsawwassen people are they're the people of the ocean. So we adopted an approach where any new construction had to be at the minimum floor elevation of 3.5.
Right.
And we also we follow the BC building code. So any of the new buildings and or any conversions have to take into account the seismic upgrade requirements based on the BC building code. And then also our planning group conducted a very thorough assessment over the last 3 or 4 years on the coastal flood risk and what are the mitigation options to TFN and what's acceptable to the community and what might be some of those other approaches, including strengthening our dikes or relocating some portions of our other infrastructure and so on. So it's a lot of work, but it's an ongoing conversation. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay. Very good.
May I continue then, or did we
Yeah,
have
please.
any?
Oh, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Again, I'll pass on the conversation to Priyanka, but we were just trying to make sure that our housing strategy helps leverage all our partners and in terms of funding, building, managing, maintaining all our housing stock, like just making sure that we have aid from the private sector, from the markets, from our intergovernmental partners. And these might be different approaches for developing new stock versus managing existing stock, but we just wanted a guiding program, and this is what we hoped it would be. And lastly, I just wanted to add that our elected leadership promotes the underlying principle of no member being left behind in all our work. And so we wanted to move away from just being a housing provider, and we wanted to make sure that we provided support in a manner that all TFN residents, members, and otherwise felt supported in a way that improved well-being, improved outcomes in terms of the entire community's well-being, and not just provide rental housing. So on the basis of this, we had 9 themes, and Priyanka is going to share a little bit more about that going forward. Here you go, Priyanka.
Thanks, Komal. I'm Priyanka Roy, and I'm the housing planner at TFN, and have had the pleasure of working with our planning staff on the housing strategy. We have 9 themes within the housing strategy that have helped us define the steps that we'll be taking in the next, starting now in the next 5 to 10 years, and improving the TFN community area for all members. This being for members who are living on lands, and also improving the lands so we can have more off-lands members come and live on TFN lands. So the very first strategy has been adoption of the TFN community area. The land use plan, which was adopted in 2008, was never fully finalized, and it wasn't officially adopted. So the last 10 to 12 years has been all about doing community consultation work and finding ways to keep preserving the TFN community area, and also allowing members to benefit from the economic opportunities, be it leasing their lands to non-members or developing their private lands, and expanding and having more housing opportunities on their lands. So the finalization and adoption of the members benefit area has been very important, especially because we've been trying to see how the members' property tax, how the taxation would work out at the end of 2021. And it's been at the forefront of all of our membership's mind, how they're going to pay for their property taxes, and what kind of benefits can they get by being in the community area. So we've been doing community consultation work, and this year we are in the process of finalizing the TFN community area, and the policy framework is also being developed at the same time. The second theme has been around helping members build new homes on TFN lands, which has been a big challenge. So in the past 10 to 12 years, we have had about 14 new member homes being built. And so that's since treaty, only like 14 member homes have been built. And the process has been daunting for members for various reasons. One is being like servicing the lands has been problematic. Members have, there's been the lack of knowledge about home construction. And so oftentimes members have tried to look at prefab homes, which would be easier in some cases, or they're looking at hybrid homes where half of it is built in the factory and the other half is built on land. And then some have gone with the conventional stick-built construction. And then another issue has been getting a mortgage, and not just getting a mortgage, it's been how much can they get, be it, some have qualified for 250,000, some have qualified for 500,000. So it varies, and that limits the kind of homes that members can build. So to solve that and to provide as much support as possible, TFN has come up with several ways to help the membership, and staff have helped facilitate the process, the home building process for members as much as possible. So one of the things that's been done is TFN has created, has provided free lots and which have been serviced and in a particular subdivision. It's called Falconway lots. And these lots are free. They have been serviced, and there are several grants available to the members. So once they qualify for a mortgage and they have chosen their builder who helps project manage, they can access grants. One being the pre-construction grant, which is from which ranges between 15,000 to 20,000. That'll help them cover their pre-development costs. And there's also a servicing grant, which is available to members who are building on other private TFSI lands. And this servicing grant has no cap, and it helps members service their lands. And it also pays for project management services, which we think will really help members see the construction process through from the beginning till the end. And of course, there is the new home construction grant available from Indigenous Services Canada. They very recently increased the amount to $35,000, which has been very helpful for members. Another theme has been around helping members repair and renovate their homes on TFN lands. Initially, so this is about 2 years ago, when I first started working at TFN, it seemed that there was a lot of emergency repairs that needed to be done, and it was an ad hoc process where members would come up, would reach out to us and ask for help with emergency repairs, and then we would apply for a grant, be it CMHC RAP grants or the INAC grant, the IS grant. And so we've done a pretty intense assessment of all the homes, and we've met. If Rajika, if you could go back to the previous slide, I just want to elaborate on a few things there. So we've been accessing the Indigenous Services Canada grant, which has recently been increased to $35,000 to about $40,000. So in 2018 it was $10,000, but they've increased it significantly since then, which really helped us do a lot of repairs in about 35 homes on TFN lands. So the total number of homes is around 77, and we've done renovation work in half the homes. There's still a lot of work to be done because we've only covered some significant repairs, such as roofs and bringing the buildings up to code, and also making them health and safety compliant. And we will continue to keep working on improving the policy. For instance, making sure that all the private homes are being inspected on an annual basis, which has been an issue where members don't proactively do that on their own. So maybe TFN could provide those kind of supports in the future to make sure that we have fewer and fewer emergency situations. Next slide, please, Rasika. Okay. So the next theme is around managing existing and new rental housing units. So in the last 10 years, this is the very first time that we've had 6 new rental units built on TFN lands, which was possible through the CMHC Section 95 funding. And we will also have 36 new rental units built, hopefully by 2020, end of 2022, early 2023, which has been possible through the Indigenous Housing Funds facilitated by BC Housing. And because we haven't managed that many rental housing units in the past, this is new territory for us, and we're building our system to manage our assets properly, and which includes managing the units well, but also repairing current rental stock. And this requires a lot of work, and we're trying to create a separate housing section within our lands department that will manage the existing and new rental housing. Next slide, please, Rasika. Safely housing vulnerable members of the TFN community has been a very, very important priority at TFN. Elders and youth have been they're specified as the 2 demographics most in need of affordable housing. It's still an issue because we have even though we have new rental housing units being built on TFN lands, we have a lot of youth who are looking to own their homes on TFN lands, and then we also have youth who are currently living with families but would like to live on their own. And so it's a 2-pronged approach. Like, one is to have enough rental housing units, and then also be able to provide avenues for the missing middle income group, where we have members who are qualifying for small amounts of mortgage payments, and we would like to have turnkey home options for youth who can build their homes in a small amount of money. So providing homes for elders and youth, and being able to safely house vulnerable demographics such as women who need safe homes, is something that we're slowly working towards. We're looking at funding and grant opportunities to be able to safely house women and families in areas that are not necessarily off lands, but in safe shelters, be it on Tsawwassen lands or be it in places that are not currently identified on TFN lands. And we're looking at funding options available through federal and provincial programs. Assisting TFN members to afford rent. And this is something that we are constantly working towards, trying to find subsidies for members who are renting homes on TFN lands. When we finish all the rental units, especially the 36 units that'll be built in 2022, there will be some situations where members might not be able to afford the complete rent. And so Lands has been working with finance and health and social services to find avenues to be able to provide more assistance to members who need to be able to pay rent. And so we have been working towards updating our rental housing regulation. We've got rid of the term social housing. We want it to be affordable housing, and we want to be able to work proactively with the membership to ensure that members, and this is all demographics, youth, elders, young families, how can we best support them and work with them to make sure that they are able to afford the rent and be able to progress in life and be able to, pay for education, pay for their family, and be comfortable on TFN lands and benefit from all the services available to our membership. So we're exploring a wraparound program and working with the Health and Social Services Department to make it as effective as possible. And another thing that has been an issue in the past is assisting off-land membership with their housing needs. So we have a ton of programs available to members who are living on lands, but providing housing assistance to off-lands members has been difficult, given that for and I'll give an example that the renovation grant, for instance, is only available to on-lands members. And because TFN does not have a renovation program of its own, we haven't been able to provide that kind of support to our off-lands membership. So we are working towards that slowly. And the first thing that we did was set up an emergency housing assistance grant, which which provides an assistance of $10,000 to members who might be displaced from their homes due to an emergency, be it a leak in their roof or if there was flooding in their home. TFN provides that money, and at least for now, this has helped some members who have been most in need of some funds, be it whether they're on lands or off lands. And TFN is continuing to explore other incentives because ideally we would like to encourage off-lands members to come back to TFN lands and be able to live and work on their land. And the last theme has been increasing land availability for future TFN housing projects. We have about 10 Falcon Way lots available. So this is the subdivision where the free service lots are available to members. And we are continually looking for other lands that we can provide to our membership. And we're looking for ways to improve the options that we provide. So for instance, we have an example here, lot A and B, and a 13-acre parcel on TFN lands, which is available for future housing. And we're looking at turnkey housing approaches to be able to maximize those lots. Maybe look at duplexes, building townhouses for our members. And we're also looking at other methods such as rezoning, land swap with members who have land and they would like to sell to TFN, that TFN can then use to provide housing to members. So we're trying to find ways to maximize our options, locations, and increase the value for future housing projects. At the same time, we're also researching land banking options for TFN. Now over to Rasika.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Thank you, Priyanka. That was really a great review of all our major themes under the comprehensive housing strategy. So I don't know if any of you noticed that theme 5 was sort of skipped, but it was intentionally put at the end because it is one of our major themes that we are diving into and are fully occupied with right now, which is creating new affordable housing units for our members. Like Priyanka alluded earlier, the 6plex, which is almost complete, secured funding through Section 95 of CMHC, the 36 units, which is a combination of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units through Indigenous Housing Fund, administered by BC Housing. We also have funding from REFBC for comprehensive housing strategy, as well as housing needs assessment work, which is starting soon. So we got some funding for that, and TFN government is supportive of this work because the housing needs assessment work is actually going to inform some of our important capital planning work that's going to go into providing and increasing affordable housing options that Priyanka mentioned, like turnkey or rent to own or other models that may work best for our members. I just wanted to quickly dive into this part where some important aspects that we learned with our project planning for the affordable housing projects. I'm sure some of you may be on this journey where you're trying to plan your affordable housing project as well as implement them in the coming year. Either you're already doing it or you're planning to implement them in next year or in a couple of years. So basically, project feasibility is the first important part. Of course, you need land. You need to identify a land within your community that can house this facility, whether it's a simple duplex or a fourplex or a simple project to begin with, depending on the needs in your community. So the feasibility aspect covers equity, land and construction costs, and of course, we cannot overlook development schedule because everything is time bound. Even when you get grant funding, there is a particular timeline to follow, as well as because your contracts are written in a way, a certain timeline is so important. And we realize there can be some delays which are beyond your control, but a realistic schedule actually helps. The equity is basically the land and any other cash or fundraising that you've done. And the construction costs, of course, are rising every year, as you see. And COVID era has not been easy. There have been delays, and a lot of communities have been resilient and are coming out of it and still progressing with their projects. So feasibility also includes basically looking at all kinds of costs and revenues. So capital costs and operating costs and operating revenues. So financing, if you're getting mortgage financed through various programs, PC Housing and other Van City and BMO, there are many programs that do provide construction financing at a very low interest rate, 1 to 2%. If you go through that specific program, some projects have to have some sort of a percentage that is market housing to offset or to cross subsidize the non-market housing projects. So you have to think of some creative ways of making the project work if you don't have enough capital investment or costs to fund it. And operating income and cost is a very, very real thing to look at right when you're planning a project, because you actually have to know what kind of income do your members have in certain categories, depending on the square footage of the unit. You'll be charging, and the income that exists, you'll be charging certain rents. If there is a subsidy needed, you can request a subsidy. There are some programs for that, or your leadership may be able to pitch in some money towards a subsidy. So making sure that operating income and costs are sort of well calculated. So as a snapshot in the project planning, you determine financing that's required for a particular project, capital cost, any equity you bring, whether it is land, donations, any other stuff, that is all deducted from the capital cost. That will give you a financing required. When you determine the operating revenues, you may have rents, you may have other services like laundry or parking that you charge for. They all contribute towards your operating revenues. And your operating expenses will be like a contingency fund for repairs, maintenance, as well as any utility or other things that you provide. And usually most lenders need a debt service ratio that shows a 10 to 20% surplus. So if when you do your project planning, preliminary work, if you think this is not feasible, then you have to go back to your drawing board and basically look at maybe you can reduce, you can think of some sustainable design that can reduce the operating costs. So, in the long run, or you may be able to increase the rents, which is usually not an option. But maybe you can reduce the capital cost, make the design simple, use local material and even local skills if you have in your community. Also increase equity, so you can do some fundraising for a specific project. So all that needs to be looked at. So it's an iterative process that you go through during the project planning and during construction. So once the project is planned and you go through approvals, both if you're seeking outside funding as well as your internal approvals, to comply with the code, then you itemize hard and soft tasks. So your hard tasks mostly during construction will be project management, site supervision, progress reports, site meetings, commissioning, subcontractors like electrical, plumbing, and other things. There could be some change orders. Supposing you have finalized some, countertops and you don't find those materials anymore, you may have to go through a change order. So, those are like very high level hard tasks. And then there are soft tasks, which is on the side that you have to manage a wait list of your tenants. You may write certain rental policies that support. There's also project management plan in a timely fashion. And if there is any proportion of market housing, then you could also have a marketing package for it. And if there are any supporting amenities like common laundry or a tot lot for the kids, things like that. So there is also this combination, of a variety of soft tasks that go on during construction, and the project usually may take 1 to 2 years to be actually completed and reach an occupancy stage. And at occupancy, you're actually looking at the move-in days. Coordination is critical, have adequate experienced staff on site, and resolve any issues that may occur. There's paperwork. So there's tenancy agreements, security deposits, move-in schedule, move-in instructions, walkthroughs, all those types of things at occupancy. And finally, after completion, make sure that you have your as-built drawings, because you will need them for future remediation repair work. So that's where you actually be organized and keep all these drawings in a place that's accessible. And also the warranties and guarantees have to be in place to make sure that everybody's protected. And I just want to summarize the final next steps for TFN. So we are starting our housing needs assessment work, which is going to feed into the community, which is going to feed into the comprehensive housing strategy and help us plan for the next 5-10 years. We are reinstating the Housing Advisory Committee to have a proper representation of the, various members in the stages of various life cycles within TFN. We will research and explore other ways of densifying, and we will also be operationalizing a housing section within the lands department to better serve our members. And finally, we are trying to improve on our project management support internally, as well as find some creative options for the youth and elders, and efficient management and maintenance of TFN facilities. So asset managing is still in the learning process, but we hope to make it more efficient and also continue researching for various programs and funding. So with this, we wrap up and we are open to any questions. I realize that we have very less time left for questions, but we would be happy to do another session if any of you are interested in any of these specific topics at a future date. So thank you very much, and we appreciate this opportunity.
I'd like to personally thank all the presenters. That was very good information. We do have a couple of questions here. John, do you want to go ahead first?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I have actually several questions, but I'll keep it to just one here. Your Tennessee policy, are you adopting BC Tennessee legislation? Because what generally happens is when people are living off reserve, they understand, Landlord Tenancy Act and rent and requirements and contracts. And then when they move on reserve, then it becomes a different kettle of fish. So I was wondering, in order for simplicity and consistency, and rather than reinventing the wheel, did your housing policy just adopt the BC Landlord Tenancy Act or whatever it's called?
Yes, so we do have, we follow the Residential Tenancy Act in BC. We have discussed having some sort of a TFN residential tenancy. We really haven't executed that, but right now, and just to go back, TFN is considered off reserve, so it's not, it doesn't fall in the on reserve category.
Right.
However, yeah, we do follow the Residential Tenancy Act, which is basically applicable to all lands on BC.
Yep. Yeah, why recreate something that's already existing? Okay, any other questions? Harry, I can see your thinking. Oh, you're muted there, Harry. There you go.
I'm very impressed by the work that's done. Wow, speak about being organized. What was interesting to me is the handling not only but you're also handling home ownership. Wonderful. On the prairie reserves I'm working with, home ownership is a brand new concept. But if people are going to build their own houses using their own sweat equity or their own money, they're going to want to own it. So this is a brand new topic for us. I'm so happy you've probably way down the road. Thank you.
I have a question here, I believe, from Sheila. Sheila, are you there? Maybe I can speak on behalf of Sheila. Is there a property management program that anyone uses to manage the properties and to manage these new builds as the community grows?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry, my Wi-Fi here is not doing very well. It's hard to hear you guys as well. Sorry, was there a question for me or was it just about the question that I asked?
The question you asked.
Okay, yes, I was wondering if there is any property management programs out there that anyone could recommend. Our nation is growing quite rapidly. We have about 210 homes that we manage with new housing strategy that's being built and a new phase coming up where we're going to have about another 60 new homes put in. And I'm just wondering, is there any property management programs that anybody could recommend for, large communities such as ours?
Vince, if you can respond, I think we've been trying to address this issue ourselves. Vince, are you there? Now, I know there's, oh, there you go, Vince. Thanks, buddy.
You know who I could recommend is the Housing Professionals Association, Rosie and Roxanne Harper's group. They have excellent programs, documents they can share, templates. Maybe we can share that after the meeting. As far as our area, we have the Range, the biggest band. They have 11,000 members, about 1,700 homes. They have an excellent property management program. They're the first community in our tribal council to initiate home ownership. And other than that, it's very spotty, like Larry said.
Vince,
Harry,
Vince, I thought there was a good program that's been developed for communities to manage, and the one fellow is actually in Manitoba, isn't he? Actually, Hippo. I actually have their Pat here. Wasn't Hippo doing some work as well?
Yeah, well, it's not widely used in Saskatchewan though, so we don't know a lot about it.
Right.
Also, there's quite a few database companies, but they're not necessarily housing management programs. Or well, some of them do tie in like accounting programs to manage rent collection and so on and so forth, and what they spend on housing. But we have about 3 of those companies, including Aboriginal Information Systems out of Saskatoon, Ferris Computers out of Saskatoon as well. And we have a couple of companies from Manitoba. I think the one you mentioned is from Winnipeg. Hippo?
Yeah, that's right. There's Hippo, and there's that older gentleman that always kept on coming to a lot of the housing. And I'm sure if I look for his card, he's always been a big support of all the conferences, but he's also pushing. I think he was one of the first ones out of the block. Do you remember his name, his company?
It's on the tip of my tongue. I just can't.
Anyway, I have that too. I'll have to go through my folder. But yeah, there are some companies out there that are trying to cater to all the ISK and CMHC requirements at the same time. So it makes
The fellow's name is Chris Wood.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, he's actually in. I think he was the first one out of the blocks.
Yes. Fairly simple program, easy to use.
Yeah, he's in Winnipeg there.
I have another question while I'm on. Have Tsawwassen First Nation used the National Housing Strategy Co-Investment Fund?
Not yet.
No, there's quite a bit of money or loan money in there. We haven't got fully into it yet. We're going to have to find investors, some way to repay the loans. Rent is kind of a bad word when there's no social assistance involved, and the treaty issues become pretty prominent as well. Treaty right to shelter is quite strong in the prairies, and we're also moving towards universal shelter, where if the First Nation develops a rental regime across the board, Indigenous Service Canada Social will actually cover the rent for eligible social assistance clients for non-mortgaged homes. Right now, it's only CMHC Section 95 that qualify for any assistance. So that's another program that we're tying into the co-investment approach. So just some things that we're working on here. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions out there before we decide that we're going to finish our session here?
I think I just think out loud, like that was pretty comprehensive. I almost wondering down the road, we may want to probably dissect down some of those smaller pieces for a presentation. Like it's a fantastic overview. No wonder you look tired all the time we see you on the video. And so I'll follow up, and maybe we can get a further breakdown on some of those key areas, because I had about 15 questions here, and I'd be interested. So I'll follow up, and we can figure out, down the road of which segments probably benefit all of us. I think, because you had all those 5 areas, maybe we just take a theme and just focus on the theme. If that works, if that
Sounds
works
good.
for your group. Okay.
Thank you, John. That sounds good. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. No, excellent. Boy, that's probably one of the most comprehensive ones I've seen for quite a while. So great work.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that information. I think it was greatly appreciated. Yes, we will get the contact information out for everyone to share.
Okay.
And certainly we will follow up with a recording in case you want to catch a few more highlights that you might have need to go back and review.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.